Support Pro Play Games on Patreon.
Yo, Dragon Ball Super Card Game players, it's your boy here, Frisco Foz here with another deck profile. We're gonna jump right into it. I know I teased Vegeta BR leader with previous videos with the Goku Mono Red set 16 leader. I was kind of teasing a lot of deck lists, but a lot of things have changed. I've been playing the deck. Right, I've been playing the deck a lot more, and I kind of came to a conclusion what kind of like the best version is. I got some trap cards in the side deck that I want to go over, and other variants you can do and whatnot, and we'll discuss that near the end, and kind of discuss why I kind of lean towards this route. I was gonna just go over like 3 or 4 different decks with a bunch of those different cards. I was like, I'll just kind of discuss why I don't like them. And then hopefully you guys agree, disagree, go from there. So Vegeta BR, if you guys know, this is a promo leader. It's coming out with, if you buy product and you typically in store, you get the leader, the Unison. Unison's not that good, we won't talk about him. He's a Trunks god Unison, but this is the Vegeta BR leader. It's resembling of the Gogeta BR leader way back when you know, I played the deck back in celebrations with like Goku ramp and things like that, like what's it, like 2 years now. So this is kind of bring back that those cards, revitalize it a little bit, give it a little bit of life, you know, inject some juice in there, and hopefully it brings it to life. You know, we'll check it, we'll find out, and we'll see where the road takes us. But the leader, let's discuss it first, because the front side is bonkers, is absolutely bonkers, right? When you attack, draw a card. Cool, no biggie. The activate battle is key. Choose up to one of your red or blue Saiyan cards in your hand and discard it. So choose up to one. You don't have to discard it. You can do it to fuel your drop area if you need to hit like a overwhelm counter or anything like that. But you look at the top 3 cards of your deck, pick one Goku BR, Vegeta BR, or Gogeta BR, put it in your hand, replace the remaining cards on the top of your deck in any order. So you get to basically draw an extra card on both sides of the game, which is absolutely nasty. You're gonna have a huge hand, it fuels your engine. Basically it turns in your fusion pieces, as in like you don't really lose cards out of your hand, because you'll notice on the back side it draws a card, the 5-drop draws you a card and things like that. So it kind of makes the fusion aspect of the deck not make you lose so many cards from hand, but it requires you to run an engine to really get net value from drawing the card. So it kind of, you know, puts you in that phone booth or in that pigeonhole that you're like, hey, this is what you have to play, kind of thing. You can awaken at 4 or less life, or if you have 4 or more energy, untap 1, draw 1. Backside leader. All your red Gogeta BR, so red, blue, red, green. There is a red, green 5-drop, by the way, that will work for this on the auto, but it's another deck. I don't think it's that good. But anyways, and again, Unity Fusion, 1 red, 1 blue, right? And 2 colorless. You get all your Gogeta BR cards get fusion with the Goku and Vegeta BR card in your hand. So basically your 6-drop basically gets a fusion, so you don't have to play this for 6, or you don't have to use the activate main because you're not Gogeta 5. You're just you either play this card for 4 energy, essentially, or the other 8-drop in the deck, which I'll kind of go over that as we're done talking about the cards. Yep, when attacks, draw a card, and when you play a Gogeta card, you draw 1, and at the end of your turn, so it's kind of worded weird. You draw 1 right away, but you untap a red-blue multicolor energy at the end of your turn. So just kind of keep that in mind. You draw 1 right away, but you untap 1 at the end of turn, which is good, right? All right, so let's kind of go over the deck profile here. Go over the card choices first. I want to go over the package, the core, right? There's some spice in there. You'll see like a little bit of spice in there for you. For the other non-engine cards and whatnot, and what I think is the best way to kind of go about it. But first, let's start with the counts, right? We have 8 Goku BRs and 8 Vegeta BRs, right? And then we have we have 10 Gogetas, right? So we have what is that, 26 targets. So 20, though half the deck are targets off your top 3, right? So statistically, you should be hitting that every single time, right? And we'll go over ways to edge your percentages and what you should be doing, just so you make sure you hit that. But you have a half the deck is Gogeta, Vegeta, or Goku cards. It is a lot, but it's kind of necessary, sadly. You probably can cut 2 or 3 of them, you know, and then try to fit something else. It's up to you, but this is what's been successful for me. So with the Goku cards, we'll go over those first. This one's a one from the anniversary box. Reloaded cards of Blue Saiyan BR, right? When you use a union skill, or when you pitch this out of your hand for a union skill, right? At the end of turn, you get to untap an energy, which is huge, right? So your leader already untaps one, this untaps another one. So you're ending the turn with 2 energy without even counting the ramping with pitching this card. Really good. Next is the promo from the expansion, like the little expansion booster stuff that comes with like 3 or 4 packs of it, and you get this card in it. The card's okay. It's a counter attack. When you play this card, choose up to 2 opponent's battle cards with energy cost 3 or less, return them to their hand. It's kind of a pseudo check lane. If all your opponent's energies in rest mode, you get to ignore the energy exhaust skills, which is kind of cool. Thing to note about this, so when you ramp with your 6 drops or your 5 drops, if your opponent is tapped out, all their energy in rest mode, this will come in active mode. So keep in mind in that, right? Because it negates in all areas, so in the drop area, on the top of your deck, whatever the case may be. The cool thing about these red blue 2 drops, the Goku and the Vegeta, they have the same permanent here. They get 3,000 power per energy you have, right? So when you're at like 5 energy, these are 25Ks, 28Ks at 6 energy, etc., etc. These get relatively big, and there's good synergy with this in the Unison, and I'll go over that shortly. But next, let's go over the Vegeta cards. Let's just go right here. Very similar card. Instead of counter attack, this one's counter play. It's basically denial of hope, but it's a battle card, right? So if it's power of it 20k or less, it goes at the bottom of their deck, not the drop area. But they still don't get the autos, right? Any autos on play skills, anything like that. Counter play, everything all goes at the bottom. Same thing, if all your opponent's energy is rest mode, you get to ignore the energy exhaust, and get the same thing with 3,000 power for each energy you have. So still a really good card. This is the better of the 2, I would say. I like keeping this card in my hand because you end the turn with a lot of open energy, and then this is a great card to crack back with and just kind of keep defense up. Really good card. This is cool. So when you discard this card from your hand with a Union Fusion skill, you get to look at the top of your deck for a Gogeta BR card, and then put it in your hand, and then you get the pitch card from your hand. What a lot of times I like to do, if I already have a 5 drop, 6 drop, and 8 drop, say if I have it all, right? I still like to do this, and I like to find the other piece, right? Because you're really high on red blue count. I like to grab extra 6 drops or an extra 5 drops and just get them in my hand and pitch them out of my hand, right? Because then it fuels the drop area for your overall. Also, and it lowers the chances of drawing more of them later on, because you don't really need, after you see the first 5 drop and the first 6 drop, you don't really need to see more. That's why, you know, you can potentially maybe cut a 6 drop, but then sometimes I wasn't hitting it. I was getting like frustrated with this. It's like, all right, it's just a known thing. You gotta just run them all, right? But to make your deck smaller and to deck thin, just grab the Gogetas that you don't need, and just pitch them out of your hand. Fuel the drop area, make the deck smaller, so you draw your other cards at later parts of the game. It's kind of the thing that I like to do. So the 5 drop Gogeta, let's go to the Gogeta cards. This was one of the new ones here. It's a 5 drop of Union Fusion 3, 20k blocker. Card can be KO'd by skill, so it's cool. Leader cards of blue, Vegeta, or Gogeta BR, so you can use for both leaders. At the end of your turn, draw 1, ramp 1. But you have to get the red-blue multicolor card from your drop area. So you have to make sure you have one in your drop area. So typically you want to Union Fuse with one of the 2 drops, right? Or your front side can just pitch one. So if you don't have one of these 2 drops, it just would be pretty unlikely. But if you don't have one of these, your leader can pitch another red-blue Saiyan card from your hand. Doesn't matter the cost, just to make sure you hit that requirement. So keep that in mind when doing it. It is a -1 from hand, but what are you gonna do? You gotta make sure you ramp right. So the other Gogeta card, this is from the good old collection set back in the day with that and the Brawly 6-drop, the all-out assault as well. The activate main won't matter because your good leader is not Vegeta BR. But basically, this leader lets you play this for 4 with the Union Fusion, right? So you get to pay for 4, and it gains the skills here. So it gains the skills, cost 4. At the end of the turn, put 2 cards from the top of your deck in your energy, and then negate the skill for the game. So you can't ramp 2 after every turn. If you play a new one, you can, right? But this auto negates itself at the end of the turn. And that's good, right? Because you got to keep in mind of these. If your opponent's tapped out, these come in active mode, so keep in mind in that. So at the end of this turn, you can actually have like 4 or 5 energy on tap because your leader untaps 1, the Goku 2-drop untaps 1, and you ramp 2, right? So that's already 4 potential untapped energy. It's usually going to be 2 and 4. It's a lot of energy, right? You got to make sure you capitalize that and make sure you use your Vegetas and your Gokus. Try to keep those in your hand after you fuse them once for the 5-drop, and just try to utilize your energy. The deck is a lot on 10k, so just make sure you try to find ways to use your energy efficiently. And I'm going to go over some of those examples here because the deck does have a lot of energy on defense, so just kind of keep in mind on that. All right, last Gogeta card. This card can evolve off the 6-drop, right? So if you don't want to ramp at the end of the turn, you can on turn 4 just play this card and then just go into this card. If your opponent's, it's a double trigger, if your opponent's board is clear, right, they have no battle cards, you choose 2 cards from your opponent's life and put them in their drop area. So you burn them for 2, but you really crit them 2 life. So cards are really good. You have to choose 2 cards from your hand, red cards from your hand, and put them in the drop area to do the EX evolve. It does have a permanent where it can't be KO'd and it can attack battle cards in active mode, which is cool, right? And it has this cool auto when a card attacks a battle card, switches card to active mode, which is cool. So if your opponent has like 4 battle cards, you can just swing at each of them. And unless if your opponent has a way to interact with this card, you're gonna just be swinging at your opponent's battle cards all day. And eventually just board wipe them. But in theory, you would want them to have no board when you play this card, so you can burn them for 2. So it's kind of an even exchange. You took 2 cards from your hand and you burn them to life, and you get that breach and that extent to try to close the game. And then that's why we basically play Secret Identity, right? Make sure we board clear. You know, overwhelm 6, choose up to 6 of their cards, warp them, total cost of 6, warp them. It doesn't get around barrier. That's gonna be kind of a weakness of this deck, is getting rid of barrier guys to get this auto off. So just kind of keep in mind on that. So we went over the overwhelm. Now the payoff. The payoff, right, is gonna be the turning the tide. I have 3 in the deck right now just because you really want to see it, and you can play this card on turn 5. On turn 5, you're gonna have 8 energy. Because you're gonna ramp 3, 1 from the 5-drop, 2 from the 6-drop. So on turn 5, you're gonna have 8 energy, more than enough energy to play this card and then some. The ceiling of the deck, well, if you don't know what this card does, basically it's the best finisher in the games. Your opponent chooses all their cards in their hand in their drop area, shuffle them back in their deck. You shuffle all your cards back in your deck as well. So you basically go to hand parity at 0, and if your opponent's at 2 or 3 life and you have a couple bodies on board, you're probably winning the game, right? And this is 30k critical. Yeah, the turns that I like to play this on turn 5, right? The sequencing I like to do it is when your opponent, when you board clear, and I'll go over the other ways to do it. You can, if you're a 6-drop existing on board, which has barrier, by the way, I didn't mention it has barrier, so it's pretty likely that it is going to survive. You can EX evolve and burn 2 and play the 7-drop on the same turn, right? So this auto says at the bottom, I should probably say that you can't play this card for the turn, but you can play other battle cards, right? So that's the good part about it. You can play this card and play Turning the Tide on the same turn, and when you pitch the cards from your hand, like, I don't care, I'm already turning the tide, I'm gonna lose all the cards on my hand anyways, right? So that's really cool synergy there, where then you could play this 8-drop, burn them for 2, go into the 7-drop, and then you can crit them for 1 and then hit them for another 2. So basically you can take them down to 5-0 with literally no interaction at all if you you know, if you choose to go that route, if that makes most sense. So just keep that in mind. That's the best way I like to try to end the game. It doesn't go always as planned, as everyone knows, but you got the flexibility to do that. Let's go for super combos real quick. We got 2 Zeno. You're ramping cards from the top of your deck, so that leaves variance. Variance equals feels bad if you if you ramp Hatch or other cards you need. So that's why you have Zeno in here, just to have that extra possibility of getting a card that you need and getting a card out of your hand that you don't need, etc., and gaining an energy. The deck does charge mono red and blue red and blue, so you can't really use the Vegeta super combo like in Discipline Warrior to draw 2 bottom deck 1 or bottom deck 1 draw 2, I should say. So that's why we have the 2 generic combos, draw 1 super combos, 4 or less, draw a card. You can play Zamasu, Sacred Disbelief, just tap something. I noticed that I just needed to draw the extra card because you draw a lot of your pieces, but you don't always draw a lot of your non-engine cards, so your super combo helps you find those other cards too. Hatchiak, one of the best SCRs in the game, really good here on the Turning the Tide play too, around like on your crackback, right? So the turn you play the 6 drop. If you have this, you're like, well, I guess I get my turn, and if you play the 8 drop and Turn the Tide and Overwhelm and New Ruler, you know, and you have a Hatchiak, you're probably winning the game, right? If you don't know what this does, 3 or more energy, negate the attack, play this card, your opponent can't attack for the turn, you get to pitch 1 card from your hand to play it for free, 40k free, end turn card, super good card. Senzu being 4, a lot of 10Ks, a lot of ways to extend defense and play your 2 drop Gokus and Vegeta BRs, so it's pretty stable there. D-Magic, same thing. You want more energy just to have more 10Ks to combo with, just in case, because your deck can be fragile to any type of aggro deck. So you need those Dimension Magics to untap blue, which cool, it untaps red blue energy. I think you guys pretty much well know that by now, but just in case you don't know, untaps red blue energy. Just keep in mind, if you tap a blue energy, you can then untap 2 red blue energy, so the energy you tap doesn't always have to be the one you untap. So just keep that in mind. Misconception I see a lot of people do. Champa is here for any type of Unison threat, right? Or just another way to close the game. Go ahead, another extension, you know, just need a way to give something double strike and threaten lethal. Turning the Tide doesn't feel like the way to win the game. Just a one-of, just to have it in the deck, just to have it if you need it kind of thing, which it does come up with. Now I'm saving these 3 cards for last year because these are probably the most unique cards in the deck, and they have a lot of synergy with the deck itself. I'm going to go over the Unison first. This is probably one of the best Unisons in the game. When your opponent activates a counter skill, choose up to 1 of your opponent's battle cards with 15k or less power and KO it, which is really good because it helps clear off the weenies off the board. Also, if you have Yamcha counterplay, if your opponent, you can also shrink things and then have the auto trigger to kill things that are 30k or less, right? Because say if your opponent plays a robotic riposte, right? You can Yamcha the robotic riposte counter window 2, and then say if they have a Turles all too easy on board, right? So you can kill the robotic riposte, shrink the Turles by 15. Now it's a 5k. Now your auto triggers, they activate a counter, you can kill the Turles that was now a 5k. So you kill 2 guys with 1 card with 0 energy. It's a great trade-off. And you can do that with any other battle card that's basically 30k or less for the second card that they play kind of thing. So just keep that in mind. It's really good auto. It just helps edge your bets against any type of yellow deck in itself. It's +1, draw a card. It's great. So this is another way to edge your top card of your deck for the front side of your leader, right? So if you notice the top side of your leader, say is on your crackback, right? Say if you're on the plate and your opponent attacks you, right? You draw your 1 card. You see oh, there's 1 Gogeta card, but then there's 2 non-Gogeta Goku Vegeta cards. Before swinging with your leader, you can then or if there's 2 of them, right? So then you put 1 of them that you grab in your hand, the non-Gogeta Veku or Gogeta Vegeta Goku card, put that on top of your deck, so that's the card that you draw for turn. And then the top card that you stacked is a card, right? So you want to make sure you hit that card. right? So then you do your leader skill, but you can't do your leader skill with your leader attack because you draw the card first. So you put your 2-drop first, swing with the 2-drop, activate battle, look at the top 3, grab that 1 card, then your +1 draws a card and your leader attack draws a card, so you clear the next 2 cards off the top of your deck. So then you stack the other non-Gogeta Veku or Vegeta Goku cards not on top of your deck when you start drawing your cards with like your leader attack and Piccolo skill, to make sure that you round your percentages, so you make sure that you're always hitting off your leader skill. Hopefully that made sense, because like the time that you don't want to draw a card when you attack, play your Piccolo Unison, you can swing with it, use your auto first or your activate battle first before drawing with your leader skill. So you just have to basically use sequencing to your liking. Obviously you don't have to do that, right? I mean, I just like the way that you can just basically stack your deck or draw the cards you want to draw, and then making sure that, you know, when your leader attacks or someone attacks you on the other side, that you can actually activate your leader skill again and make sure you draw. Piccolo does turn off the ability to do the activate battle on your opponent's turn sometimes, because it's they just swing at it, right? Which is okay, right? This is a kind of like a turn 5, 6, 7 deck. So if they're investing 2 to 3 things on your Piccolo Unison and it replaces itself, that's a win, right? Because they're investing that many resources and giving this guy outboard rather than trying to protect your life. Also, Yamcha helps clear any of those early threats that are trying to pressure as well. In the Piccolo, since it replaced itself, it kind of, you're just going to keep the same Hayden parity if you didn't play it anyways, and it just soaks up that much more attack, so I definitely like it. I went over Yamcha counterplay, new ruler. You don't get the permanent because your leader card's not red, but it's a free 15k double striker. Basically, you want to go all in, right? So when you play Turning the Tide, before you play it, you want to get as many bodies on board as possible, right? Because you want to get as many threats, so you want to do Overrel, new ruler. If they counterplay with something just to get bodies on their board, you want to Yamcha their board, right? Just to like, hey, you know, get these 3 guys on board, just to basically try to extend that victory as much as possible. So keep that in mind. That's the main reason on there. It's just basically another overall, and that's not a black card that you can charge if you absolutely need to. Now, the secret sauce. This is it. This is the coolest interaction between Piccolo 2-drop and the 8-drop Gogeta. I was kind of mentioning this in the 3xG Discord a while back when I was playing the Gogeta leader, set 12, I think, the red Gogeta leader when Red Brawley came out. So this auto says when your opponent plays a counter, right, you get the chaos with your 15k or less. If your opponent's board is clear, right, and then you go into EX Evolve, your opponent can then counterplay just to get a body on board, so your opponent doesn't burn too, right? Typically, I like to wait to like counter that, just so I can then make sure I burn the 2. So I play this. Say they counter with like Frieza's charismatic villain, right? Piccolo 2-drop auto will trigger, right? It'll go into pending. 8-drop goes into pending as well. His auto goes into pending. After they resolve their counterplay, your autos go first because you're turn player, right? You get to choose the order of your autos that resolve. So you can resolve this first, KO the charismatic villain because it's 15k or less, it's 10k power. Then your auto triggers, right? And then you could still burn the 2 life. So just keep that in mind. That's probably the coolest interaction here with that, because technically, or like Steadfast Goku, right? Like, I'll just tap it and not burn your 2 like the ultimate deck, right? You're like, oh shoot, right? But this can actually still kill the Steadfast Goku, and then you can burn 2 afterwards. So that's the coolest interaction. One card that you can't get around is Masu the Eliminator. But that's where Yamcha comes into play, right? So if Yamcha is in your hand, you have 2 markers or more on your Unison, right? Which, if it survives, it probably does, right? You can then, if they Zamasu the Eliminator counter window 2, you can shrink it by 15k, then still do your auto on that. So just keep that in mind as well. And if your opponent gets greedy, say if they already have a board, right? Like a 15k and you know, 215Ks, and like you just play Gogeta 8 to try to like burn them kind of thing, where they still counterplay it, then Yamcha can still kill the 2 dudes that are on board. Your Piccolo kills the counterplay card, and then you can still burn 2, so you can kill 3 cards out of nowhere and still burn 2, so keep that in mind. The other secret sauce with this Unison is -2, right? Choose up to one of your red battle cards with energy cost 3 or less. You get to KO all those battle cards depending on the power of your battle card, right? So these cards gain 3,000 power per energy. So the turn that you want to do the 8 drop, right? You're like, oh, these guys, they have big boards. I need to get these guys off board. Well, at turns 5, you're at 7 or 8 energy, right? So you're going to be at 31K or 34K. That means this -2 clears the entire board of 30K or less for your 8 drop to resolve. That's probably one of the coolest things. You just have to have one of these 2 drops on board, and boom, -2, you get the board wipe. So that's a really cool interaction I like as well. All right, so guys, I hope you guys liked that deck profile here. That was everything entailed in there. I want to kind of go over some of the trap cards here for you real quick, and we'll go from there. So, one thing I want to talk about as far as trap cards. The first trap card I actually want to go over here is the Goku here, Might in the Making. So this is pay 2, draw 2. You get a 10K blocker, and you get to play the Gogeta Unison. I found this card to be very lackluster. A couple of reasons why. Sometimes you don't even hit the 5 drop on curve because you just get unlucky, right? You don't get the Vegeta, you don't find the Goku, or you don't find this card, right? And if you miss this card on turn 3, how often do you think you're gonna miss this card on turn 2? I missed it all the time. Or I didn't want to use it because I didn't have pieces to do the ramp on turn 3, and I just didn't want to assume I'm going to draw more pieces. It's not a fair assumption. It can be likely, you could, but it's not a guarantee, and that's more of your game plan than playing this card. Also, if you don't play it on turn 2, this card doesn't scale very well. Once you play it, if you play it on turn 3, turn 4, turn 5, like there's never a turn after turn 2. I'm like, oh yeah, I really want to jam this Goku. I'm like, this doesn't feel that great. So this card's definitely a trap. I don't think you want to play it. It does give you God Sealing, but I'm like, it's like God Sealing's kind of medium right now. Anyways, it's not the best card. It's not the worst card by any means, but you can win games without it. So keep that in mind. Next, the strategy here with Frenzied Burst, the SSB Gogeta. This says if you have 15 energy, you get the bottom deck for life, right? EX Evolve, 8 energy. You have to play it off top of the 6 drop, get the ramp 6 energy, right? So you get to play it off the 4 drop, or the 6 drop that turns into a 4 drop. So on turn 5, you're at 8 energy, right? Because 1 energy here, 2 energy here. So on turn 5, you're at 8 energy. If you do this card, you're at 14 energy. You need 1 more, right? And that's where Zeno Unison comes into play, or any ramp card, right? Because you want to ramp, and then you want to ramp another energy to do 15 energy, so then you can actually burn 4 all on turn 5. The problem with that strategy is you have to hit 2 blue energy off the top of your top 6, and typically you're going to hit multicolor cards that potentially are going to come in rest mode. Mono red cards, you're not going to always hit 2 blue, so that's kind of risky. And then you have to edge your bets, and you have to tailor your deck and probably put some Goku striving to be the best and whatnot in the deck to run out the blue count to make sure you have enough blue energy, enough ratios, right, to actually hit those 2 blue energy at the top of your deck. I think it's a whole other deck in itself. I was trying to like just jam it all into one deck, and I'm like, it doesn't really work in itself. So if you really want to play the 10 drop, I think a Zeno is needed, but you only need to play like 2 Zeno, right? Maybe 3, but you don't even want to play it until turn 5 until you resolve the 10 drop, because The +2 on Zeno is ruled that you can't ramp with Zeno and then ramp with the 5-drop or the 6-drop because the end of turn effects, Zeno is still in effect and you're not allowed to do it. That's how it's currently ruled. So you can't do that. And its -5 is good, but it's not good enough to turn off all your ramp. So keep that in mind. Alright, so other ways to use your energy. Oh, no. Before I do that, other trap cards. 5-drop, 6-drop, right? You can play the 6-drop just straight for 4 energy. My thought is if this card wasn't good enough at 3 energy and Red Gogeta BR, it's not good enough for 4 energy. It doesn't have any really protection other than it can't be KO'd. So it can be Secret Identity, it can be Shrunk, it can be God Sealing, it can be Bottom Deck, it can be Return to your hand, yada yada. This card's not surviving unless you put Strides of Universe 7 in the deck, which takes up more deck space. And the 5-drop in itself, you could still make it 3 energy and still do like a game plan with this. I just don't think it's good enough, right? You don't get the auto, you don't get them add the marker on the Unison or anything like that. It's just basically to facilitate your 5-drop, 6-drop if you wanted to go that route. I don't think it's good enough, but prove me wrong. Let me know guys what you think. Now, the other ways to use your energy on defense, right? Typically you have 2 blue to use like Riot Javelin. Barrier guys are a pain in your arse. Said it like that. Basically, this negates attack. You get to choose a battle card if I less ignore barrier return to their hand. So it basically lets you set up your Gogeta play and get rid of their barrier dudes. Keep that in mind. They could potentially just replay it, but then hopefully you have a Vegeta online to counter it, and it's 20k or less, so it actually hits the drop area. You do have 4, sometimes 5 energy on tap, so keep this in mind. And as far as UI Goku here, it's counter attack or counter play. And this card can't be negated in any area by your opponent's skills. It can't like Bloodlust or anything like that. Auto, when you play this card, choose one of your opponent's battle cards, ignore a barrier, turn its hand, and if your opponent's turn, draw a card, right? So this draws a card on your opponent's turn and bottom deck, or I'm sorry, returns a hand 1 barrier threat. So it's anti-barrier, and you can do it on almost I mean, it's as close to instant speed as we have in this game because you get to play it at basically any time on your opponent's turn. Anytime they flinch, you get to play this card. So keep this card in mind. I'm still like deciding if it can fit in the deck at all. It's a really cool card, and it can sometimes blow out any big bomb threats that your opponent's playing. This Goku card, the new one here, the Miraculous Transformation, it's a 20k triple striker, barrier, unique, deflect. It's a lot of keywords. During your opponent's turn, you basically get to reduce this by 3 for every energy. What is it? In your hand for each every card in your opponent's energy, right? So your opponent's at 3 energy. This becomes a 3-drop on your turn. And if your leader is bound blue and this card is a rest one, your opponent can't. Your opponent's battle cards can't attack your leader card. So basically, battle cards have to swing at this guy or Unisons before it can swing at your leader. Excuse me there. Alright. Sleepy Boy technique. This is another one. 3-drop, counter ready attack, negate, draw 2 cards, return a card back to your opponent's hand. It's just a solid card, honestly, and you have so much energy on your opponent's turn. It's super easy to do, barely any inconvenience. And also Death Beat, it's 2 red, 1 blue, so it makes that energy count. That's pretty specified energy, but this deck can do that pretty easy here too. Basically it's 3 energy, kill barrier, do 30k power, you know, ignore barrier, really good card. Nothing really to say about it. You can do it during battle and just KO something. I just get rid of that barrier threat, another barrier removal, instant speed kind of thing during battle phase or during the combo stuff. You have Topo Righteous Aid as well. This is just like a generic card that's just good. Probably more needed against Gogeta Zeno more than any other deck. I found it not that necessary against like the mid-range decks because I'm like, I'm pitching a card out of a hand, I'm playing this 20k guy, but I'm like, I just neg 2 cards from hand, whereas if I play any of these cards like Sleepy Boy, Death Beam, or whatnot, I can still not lose that many cards from hand because this drew me 2 cards and I can still defend the turn without losing as many cards with Topo, right? topos for what people are really going to attack like 3 or 4 times per turn. Not a lot of decks are doing that right now, so it just depends on where you go from there. Here's some good flex cards or whatnot. Vegeta is just a good card. This is going to be more in the burn deck because it's just 3 blue, but it's just basically choose 2 your opponent's battle cards, pop deck them, dual attacker. Counter is kind of cool a bit too. This card's kind of interesting here. Excuse me. This has some power too, so you can stack your Piccolo Unison. If it has 2 markers, this gains 2 markers, right? So if you play this for 2, stack your Piccolo Unison, it goes in at 4 markers. Then this auto goes off. Burst 1, if this card has 4 or more markers on it, when this card's played, draw a card. Cool. So it replaces itself. So it comes into play at 2 energy, 4 markers. Then this auto triggers, right? If it's your turn, when this card is placed, when a card is placed in your drop area from your deck, add a marker to this card. Then choose the your opponent's battle cards and it gets minus 15k for the turn. Since you burst 1, this auto automatically triggers, right? So then it goes to 4 markers. So 2 energy, 5 marker Unison, drew a card, kill the guy, minus 15k, or at least minus 15 something, and you get the option of minus 4 of getting a basically 20k triple attacker. So basically 2 energy, 20k triple attacker with a deck that has 7 energy, 5 energy at will. This is a really good card as like a Unison killer, right? Because if you have Piccolo Unison and you're against blue decks and you need to turn out that God Stealing card, you can think about running 2 or 3 copies of this because you would sack your Piccolo Unison, play this Unison, and then kill their Unison with your Unison. I wonder how many times I can say Unison in one sentence. Turn off your God Stealings, or turn off their God Stealings, so you can then ramp with your 5 drop and 6 drop. So that's probably one good way to clear Unisons, or just threaten lethal, right? If your opponent's playing around, turning the tide, playing around the 8 drop, and you know they're tapped out, have a bunch of bodies on board, right? And you need to go lower to the ground, this is your card to do it. Because you can then play this for 2, right? And then you can play the next one for 3 energy, stack this one, and just rinse and repeat it. So you can really do this a lot, many times, and you have sense being in effect, right? Which I don't even know if I went over this card, but it's pretty generic. You guys know what this does, but it gives your the card 5k for the turn. So 1 sense could be on this thing, right? It's 25k triple attacker, and you net it and only for 1 energy at that point. It's really good. I put it in the main deck, but I only need like 1 or 2 copies. It's probably going to be more of a side deck card. I think I covered it all there. I really like this deck here. I think it's a really cool strategy. It kind of brings back the ramp strategy itself. Draws a lot of cards. It's a super good deck. I don't know if it's going to be tier 1 just yet. I think this is definitely the route to go if you want the most competitive version to play the Piccolo Junior Unison route, because it keeps you in the game against the yellow decks. And it lets you kind of keep those games more close. I think you might have to find another route to win the game if turning the tide is not going to get you there, because sometimes it doesn't, right? It doesn't always get you there. You can get the energy, but sometimes it's just not the right play to do. Or like might be other ways just to win the game. So keep that in mind. Everybody, I hope you guys enjoyed this profile. I went over a lot of the interactions, a lot of the cards, a lot of the play lines here. If you have any questions, don't be afraid to reach out. I'm usually on Facebook Messenger. Just hit me up. Hopefully I can answer all your questions here. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was a fun one. I definitely liked the deck. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a good one, everybody. Bye.